So the moment we've been waiting for has finally come. The Final Fantasy XVI demo has officially launched. So does the game look promising? How do I feel about it? All these questions and more we will be answering today. But basically, boys, we are so back right now. So this demo review is going to be a bit all over the place and is going to be unfiltered and unscripted because this is my raw feelings on the game. Now with that being said, this demo was absolutely incredible. As someone who has the grand misfortune of having to follow Final Fantasy discourse as part of this YouTube gig, it has drastically turned the conversation in favor of Final Fantasy XVI. This has been the most brilliant piece of marketing for the game yet. It was obvious to me that trailers and developer interviews were really struggling to sell this game. Though I am someone who's seen potential in FF16 since the very beginning, it was really hard to explain that. Now if you're a Final Fantasy XIV fan, you already had high hopes for this game, but there are still tons of people who have never played FF14 before, so they really didn't know what to expect from this team, the way they tell stories, and quite honestly, the gameplay, which I think also is one of the big winners here. I'm incredibly happy to say that Creative Business Unit 3 absolutely nails all of it. Starting with the story, this is one of the most compelling openings to a video game that I have ever seen. It is paced exactly right. It doesn't overstay its welcome, but it's also long enough that you get to know the characters and feel invested in them right out of the gate. I knew I would love Clive immediately because he's exactly the type of protagonist that I like. He's absolutely Thorfinn-pilled. The big surprise for me was how I ended up feeling about Joshua and the Archduke. The Archduke, I think, is really what they wanted King Regis to be in Final Fantasy XV, but he really just didn't get the screen time in-game for him to be that, unless you watch Kingsglaive, but you never really get to see that father-son dynamic between them. But the Archduke has just enough screen time that you can really vibe the dynamic between him and Clive. Joshua is absolutely adorable, and his voice acting is part of what endears you to him. It's such a cute-sounding voice that you just want to protect this little child so badly. Unfortunately, that doesn't go exactly too well, but at least that means Annabelle is having a bad day. And when I say that she is more evil than Sephiroth and Kefka put together, I truly mean it. Annabelle has absolutely no regard for Clive, and that's because he didn't end up being the dominant of the Phoenix. The way that she neglects and treats Clive is honestly disgusting, and it will absolutely infuriate you, but I also think it's something that will really resonate with people. It particularly hurt me when all the people in town kind of noticed the way that she treated Clive, and it's like, what can anyone do? She's the queen. Even the Archduke really got tired of this lady disrespecting his son. It also goes to show you are treated vastly different in this world depending on your birth. And we're not just talking about nobles either. Dominants and bearers are treated entirely different. And one thing that's brilliant about this game is just how it goes about portraying that. If you look around the town, you'll notice that all the bearers are essentially slaves, and it even says so in their descriptions. This is one thing in particular that I really love this game, is just how effectively it communicates all this information without you having to read any sort of data logs, although they are there in the form of active time lore. This also extends to the opening moments of the game by establishing to you right away that this is what dominance and icons are. The fight between Shiva and Titan, shaking the very foundation of the earth. You immediately understand that these are powerful forces. The gameplay is good. Though the story section of this demo has simple combat, it walks you through the game at a steady pace, allowing you to get a feel before the game stacks too many abilities on you. However, this combat, even in its simple form, feels pretty good. Attacks feel incredible, there's a super tight parry window, dodging feels good, and ultimately it's way more fun to play than even I anticipated. However, if you want more time with the combat, this game made a brilliant decision, as this demo is not just one demo, it's actually two demos. There is the iconic challenge, which gives you the fight with Benedicta, as well as a a full suite of abilities. This allows you to see how the combat will shape up later in the game. It was an incredibly smart move to give that incredible opening, with a story that will make you demand more, while also giving people a taste of how the game's battle system shapes up later on. Another thing about this game is the incredible voice acting. One thing that differentiates this game from past Final Fantasy titles is that it's an English-first game, meaning they actually recorded the English voices, as well as prioritized the English script over the Japanese one, and in fact the Japanese script had to be revised to fit the English lip sync. And I must say, the results are incredible. The scripting, the pacing of the scenes, the acting, in particular Ben Starr, whose performance in just this demo alone blew me away. This is one of the most well-acted games that I've ever seen, and is an absolute new gold standard for the series. If the cast for Final Fantasy XVI doesn't win an award for this, then I think it would be an absolute crime. There's only one major flaw with this demo that people have really been harping on, and that's the performance mode. The performance mode itself tends to dip during exploration. However, it's a locked 60 whenever you're in combat. I suspect the game does this by limiting the draw distance while you're in combat, thus shooting the frame rate up to 60 frames per second, because it's almost unheard of for a game to perform better in battle scenes than it does during non-battle scenes, but this game does that. That being said, most of the demo runs at 60 FPS, minus exploring around the castle, which can dip you to around 45 FPS. It's worth noting that the demo is not based on the final build of the game, so there are some things that are subject to change. However, I don't think this mode is nearly as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. First and foremost, it still runs 60 frames per second during battle. You know, the reason that 60 frames per second even matters in the first place. I don't really need precise inputs while I'm exploring. I do empathize with people saying that the inconsistency of the dips can give them headaches. However, if you're not prone to such a thing, performance mode is still the way to go. In fact, polling my community to see which way they'd be playing the game, over 70% of people said they would still be playing the game in performance mode, even if that meant that the dips that were happening were still going to happen in the final build. I really just don't think it's that bad. Like, I tried switching over to quality mode just briefly to test things, and I immediately noped out of the 30 frames per second. Let me be clear here though, I'm not excusing this. I still think that it is something that should be patched in relatively soon if it can be. However, I gotta say that it is more than playable and more than enjoyable in the performance mode, and it's still going to be the preferred way to play for the majority of people. And while the drops here and there are an issue, I just don't think it's bad enough to make the performance mode unusable. It's still pretty good, and considering that so many games are not even locked to 30 frames per second, especially when no matter which mode you play on, this game's never gonna budge below 30, so it's going to stay playable no matter what. By the time you finish the demo and you hear Clive echoing those final words, you are hooked into this game. The reception of this demo has turned Final Fantasy XVI's fate around. This is a game that has a serious chance of being a strong contender for Game of the Year. Yeah, we all know Tears of the Kingdom will win because Zelda, but I think Final Fantasy XVI will win a much more important award than Game of the Year. It will win Game of the Night Sky, an award much more prestigious than one Jeff Keighley can bestow. And really, that's all that matters. Shout out to Samrione and the rest of the Ultima community.